How you feeling, buddy?
Feeling good. It's
Are
still
ya?
February, though. It's almost March, February 25th, the year 2021. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, and we are episode 455.
Yes, we are. Bringing it to you.
I've been soaking in the sunshine and feeling good today, although it's our last day of sunshine and warm weather at what looks like 6 straight days of rain. It'll feel like Seattle. I cannot wait for this wintry spring to be over with. Give me some summertime. Give me warm weather.
Slow down, man. Enjoy the chill a little bit.
Listen, I don't mind. It's not the chill that bothers me. It's the rain and the gloom. I'd rather it be like 20 and sunny than 60 and rainy. I mean, I like the cold. I mean, I don't like the cold. I've come to appreciate. Is probably a better way to put it.
Appreciate the cold. Yeah.
I've come to appreciate the life that it
The rain and the gloom is a
not
forced
fan.
hibernation, man. It's just telling you to chill out a little bit.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Can't go all day, every day.
I've had about enough of forced hibernation for the last year, so I'd like to get out, get some vitamin D, see my friends. And you know, I liked it. I also like to get up at 6 and have the sun already be coming up, and like get out and go outside for a run. I want to go outside at 7:30, 8 o'clock to walk my dog, and I want to see sunshine. But I won't hop down that train. I am feeling good. Hope you're feeling good as well. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, this is the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 455. It's your first time tuning in? Welcome. We know we have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, so we appreciate you giving us your time. We have 454 podcasts back in the archives. You can go one through. You just go in order if you want to, because hopefully you're going to see how much we've progressed over 5 years. People ask if I go back and listen, and I have zero desire to go back and ever listen to any of our very first podcasts. I remember exactly where I was when I was doing them. And I remember the first time you were like, "Hey man, I think we should start a podcast." And I was like, "Okay, first of all, I don't even know what that is. I don't know what we do. I don't know how this works. I still don't really know how it works. I just know that talking
Glad
to a
I did,
microphone. Seriously, it was one of your best ideas ever. I still don't know how you do it because I just talk into a microphone with you for an hour and you take care of the rest. But we've been doing this for 5 years and we love it. And we hope you love today's podcast. We cover a lot of triathlon. We cover a whole lot of life. Sometimes we'll go deep dive into swim, bike, and run training. We'll do race recaps. And we're about to start doing race previews because I'm feeling confident that races are about to start going off here, and I'm incredibly excited about that. So we'll also be able to do race recaps. We'll be at races. We will be racing. A lot of exciting stuff, hopefully coming in the next few months. But for the most part, Mike and I, as both coaches and athletes, just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're both going through, what our athletes are going through, and a lot of times what we know you're going through. We have a Facebook community called Crushing Iron Group. You can hop in there, answer one simple question. We will let you in. A lot of awesome people in there. Frequently, we'll just go in there and kind of use the pulse of the tone of the overall community and use that for the topic of the podcast for the day. Sometimes we'll ask for questions. That's all we do. Sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion between friends. No sponsors, no ads. One agenda to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Twice a week we come to you, and
which we have yesterday afternoon. We figured out is probably the most accomplished thing we've ever done in being consistent with this podcast outside of my sobriety and breathing this podcast, but also letting, what are those things called that we ate yesterday afternoon?
Bucknuts?
I think they're called Buckeyes.
Buckeyes.
We were gifted a premier set, what it looks like, a premier set in this very premier box, laminated and silky smooth, of Buckeyes that are incredibly good. I think it's just chocolate and peanut butter, which is always great. And we were gifted them, I think, a day or two before Christmas, and they are still here. I think we have one left. That's basically it's like a last slice. Nobody wants to take it, but
everyone wants it.
Everyone wants it. So we've shown great restraint, and that's here. And we've been consistent with this podcast for a long time. I do want to say though, we had this short conversation yesterday, and then we can hop into our topic for today. But we don't have sponsors. We don't have ads. However, in the past, we have enjoyed and liked using our platform. We're not the biggest, most popular podcast in the world, but we do have some influence over the 33 of you that listen to our show. So we thought that, Mike and I, we love our coffee. And, we thought that, it would be neat because we get, when people send us up, it's usually coffee. They'll send us coffee. If you would like to send us your favorite brand or roast of coffee,
like local stuff.
Local. Don't send us Folgers. We'll send it back. Okay. Or any like name brands, something from your local store. If you want to send us your favorite roast from a local store with, information about them, their email, their website, whatever, then we would be happy to brew some, have some, and then give them a quick little spiel on the podcast. Not a spiel, but like a little shout out, and hopefully drive them some business.
Yeah. If we like it.
If we don't like it, then don't send us decaf.
I think it'd be fun.
We're not reviewing decaf. Yeah.
I'm thinking about this podcast, right? Like you come on and you say, it's triathlon related and all that kind of stuff. And really, once you get a lot of people out there obviously know us over the times, and we have the camps and invite people into Chattanooga and go to races, and we're all over the place. And it's sort of like a triathlon, ongoing triathlon series, or like a drama, or a soap opera.
don't soap opera.
I know, I hate saying that.
Like Sands of the Hourglass.
Yes, but we just sort of follow the gist of what's going on in the world of triathlon right now. It's kind of like a bi-weekly show.
That is a great point. Like, because I can't fathom having started out as a podcast that was, which a lot of them are, they're primarily driven by interviews with like professional athletes. Like, I can't imagine how difficult that would have been for us to kind of transition away from the last year when there aren't really any races going on. Like, so how was your 40-hour week of training going? Oh, it's going great, John. Like, I did 40 hours a week. Can't you relate? I'm like, no, actually, I can't relate. Like, I barely even work that much. It is. We just kind of fluctuate with what's going on with the community, and not everyone, but a lot of them, and a lot of people. And so that's kind of what we hope to do. And that's actually kind of the route we're going to take for today's podcast. So, going back to the coffee thing, if you are interested in that, please, you can email Mike, and I will put this again at the end of the podcast, but you can email Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com, or me, c26coach@gmail.com. We'll give you our address here at the hub, and then we'll give a spot to your favorite local roost.
Yeah, and let me just put c26triathlon.com as our website. The podcast is Crushing Iron, and I think that might get confused sometimes. So
sure,
because we do have that domain as well, but our main stuff's at c26triathlon.com, including coaching and rates and
camps,
the club,
and all of it, and future coffee. Maybe it'll end up being coaching, camps, community, and coffee. I mean, that's really what we're at anyway. So as hopefully you're still with us, but today I popped into our active athlete group and was kind of asking if they had any particular topics for today that they wanted to go through. And one of them was, and I think this is, listen, we were in before we went on here, I was talking about, usually February is almost always a very, very quiet time in terms of coaching and racing and new athletes and people getting in training. There's not a lot of races going on. There's hopefully some on the horizon. People start out in January going gangbusters and they're ready to have their best year ever. And, with everything going on last year, you had races canceled. Now you're hopefully having races. One was canceled at Oceanside, but, we have quite a few athletes racing internationally in the next couple of weeks doing 70.3s. And I'm pretty confident we're going to see some go off even in April or May, but and you find, and then you have things that come up with, people getting sick, people getting injured. You have people, and this is kind of where the topic came up was, you have people that live in Texas getting ready for, because Texas 70.3 and Ironman Texas are, there's, I would probably say at least 50% of the athletes that participate in those races are probably from the state of Texas. Like I would have to imagine that. And then they just go through a gigantic winter storm, that that 100-year winter storm, whatever they haven't had. Pipes are bursting, pools are closed, you can't go outside, school's out. And one of our athletes was like, hey, I don't think I'm not going to get water back in my house for 2 weeks. Like I just got too much stress going on, And so you can either choose to defer and, which is totally fine in my opinion, just choose what, is best for your life right now. But I think we oftentimes, no matter where we are in life or where we are in training, sometimes we find ourselves behind the 8 ball, coming in what we would consider, are we undertrained? And I think there's a fine line between you feeling undertrained and you being undertrained, because what most people consider is, not most, but a lot of people consider undertrained is where they expected themselves to be with the perfect lead up and the perfect scenario 8 months ago when they signed up for a race. Like I feel like I'm just a little bit behind. And really, that could be life circumstance, but it also could just be your choice. Like you just haven't really been feeling. Like if I look at if I look at myself and I think, and I'll just use myself as an example, if I look at myself and I think, because I have been, you got Texas 70.3 coming up in April. I discussed this a little bit on the Zoom call that we had yesterday with our athletes. Towards the end of it, and I was talking about, testing and benchmarks and the physical investment that you put into races and even like these benchmark tests, and then where you are mentally and emotionally. And we talked about this, I think, again on Monday, about where you find yourself after being committed. Is I don't think, in terms of like my build up for Texas, what I was hoping to be Texas 70.3 this last November, I don't think I've ever been, maybe once or twice before, have I ever been in as much of a zone as I was leading up to a race. I mean, you've known me for 7-8 years through pretty much all my bigger races. Would you say you've seen me in any bigger of a zone than I was going into that race?
Never.
No. I was in probably the best zone I've been, just consistent and chipping away. And then I also think, like, when you combine it was more of an emotional day for me too. Like when you combine with the date that I was hoping to do it on, and then I was traveling, and then I had to turn back. And I honestly think it's taken me like 60 to 90 days to just kind of get over it. Like, to not just the physical toll, but like the amount of time. And I think this is so underrated and not talked enough about, because we always expect ourselves to always be trending up. We always expect better of ourselves every single day. We want to compare to last week, last race, last season, everything. And life is different. But when you're able to put in an enormous amount of energy, mental and emotional energy, focus, commitment, and then also what comes with that, which is the physical training, and then you do it, and then afterwards, regardless if the race happens or not, and you kind of finally take the foot off the gas, you kind of exhale, it's hard to get things back. Not because you're not motivated, not because you can't, because you just proved to yourself, right, that you can do it. It's that emotional and mental toll that actually I think takes a long to kind of refill your cup and kind of re-energize yourself to get back to where you want to do the work that is required to put a performance together like you're motivated. So that's what kind of found myself. And I look at the calendar and I see, April 11th for Texas 1.3. Obviously, I think, I'm definitely not in as good a shape as I was in by any stretch. But if I look at my calendar, which I have been, how would I approach the next 5 weeks? Which is basically what it is. What would I do is feeling, I hate using the word undertrained, because I think it just puts yourself in a negative headspace in terms of, I need to chase fitness. I need to be almost aggressively, and some people might say irresponsible, with trying to get this fitness, because I need to compare. I need to try to gain the fitness back, or get in the fitness, for this race that I thought I was going to have 6 months ago when I signed up. And that is a gigantic mistake. Like, you can't just be like, especially if you're on a training plan and you look at things like, my last 5 week lead up to, I'm just going to do it anyway, even if I'm not prepared for it. You can't do that, right? You can, but you're probably going to be overtrained and hurt and go into your race feeling really worn out. So you kind of think, all right, let's analyze ourselves and kind of be objective and think, all right, where do I need the most work? So for me, and this is something you can do with yourself, right? If you find yourself coming out to a race you haven't really trained for, you've been apprehensive to go all in mentally and emotionally for a race because you're not sure they're going to go off. Then the closer, race day comes, like Texas 70.3 just popped out their athlete guide, which is pretty early in my opinion. So I think that gives people hope, even though most people are probably, still kind of, down on it. I think, again, I think there's a chance it happens. So you think, all right, I got 35 days, 40 days, whatever it is, to get ready for this race. Where am I now? Right. So if I'm looking at myself, and this is, again, something you can do, an exercise for you, is like, all right, the last, 60 to 90 days, what have I done the most of? Easy. The most I've done is running. Okay. So is it running what I need to focus on right now the most? No, right? I've been running. Do I need to keep it? Yes. Do I need to make it my biggest focus? No. If I want my run, what I've been doing the last, 69 days, somewhat frequently, again, had a big week at run camp, just like you did. So like, I know I can do the distance. Mm-hmm. Where do we need to go from here? Well, my original strength and my strength will probably always be in the pool. So I know my first thing is, all right, I need to spend 5 to 6 hours, in the pool every week to get it back. No, I probably don't need to do that. I need to get back on the bike. I need to get back on the bike and put a lot of aerobic miles in. But then my first question is, do I really want to do that? Right? Do I really? Because I think that's the question we always have to ask, which is an okay question, is I know what I need, because when I was in my zone for Texas 70.3, I was riding 5 days a week. Like, you came in, you're like, there he is again. Like, here he's on his freaking bike again. Like, I know, it's like, it wasn't fun for you. I know at that point, but if I want to be where I want to be in, 35 days, which is who knows what it'll be, I just need to get back on the bike and start doing some sessions, not go ahead and make this impossible schedule like, I'm going to be perfect for 35 days because you're setting yourself for failure. So look at it and think, all right, so I need a bike. What do I need the most? I need aerobic base. So let's start there. And then prioritize that, because of a lot of athletes, but again, it could be you've been biking a lot, you haven't been running, right? Or you've been swimming a lot, you haven't been biking and running. So you kind of have to triage where your strengths are already and what you've been doing the last 69 days. And then also what the course requires, right? Luckily, Texas it can be a fast course. It can also be incredibly windy. The swim isn't that easy, but other than that, like the run and the ride are fairly flat. So you think, all right, I don't have to do way over the bike that I would normally probably have to do preparing for a much tougher course on the run or the ride. I just need to get some easy miles in. And then the biggest thing is, and I think this is really hard for athletes to accept, I'm going to shut up in a minute, I promise, is for most of us, when you going up to a race, you're probably as close to about as fast in the run and as powerful on the bike as you're probably going to be, right? If you're looking at 5 weeks out, you're not going to make some huge jump in fitness in terms of immediate critical power, top end speed. It's just not enough time, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a good reminder, I think, for all of us when you're like, how am I, am I getting faster week to week? It's going to come in weeks and months. What you need to kind of understand is I'm probably as fast as I'm going to be or as powerful as I'm going to be right now, but what I need to become is just more efficient. I need to be able to do the distance and have this amount of power, this amount of the speed and pace, not take nearly as much out of me as it would have I not done this aerobic training and building things up, week to week.
Mm. Is that it?
That's it.
Oh. Yeah, because here's the thing, right? Is like that word, it's canceled, or those two words has been like, I feel like it's taken over our lives the last year or something like that. So we have that tendency to kind of put it off. So that is sort of probably what mentally gets us behind that 8 ball that we talk about. It's like, meh. But now it's like, okay, this might happen. So what are you going to do? And for me, like if you, in your case, I think what you're saying in a lot of ways is like, you just have to do the best you can with what you have and not try to be somebody you're not. In other words, I think of these things as like, okay, so you got 5 weeks left. Where can you build confidence and like get your brain going in the right direction? And for a lot of people, you said running is where you feel good about, which is a great thing. But like a lot of people, if you don't feel great about any of the three, I think you definitely need to focus on the swim and bike, because then you got to take your chances on the run. Because if you can't get off that bike feeling okay, then, that run is going to be twice as hellish. So for me, we talked about it the other day. I mean, one of my athletes had a Tulsa on the calendar, and I was looking at where they're at, and I'm like, that kind of, but I forgot that they had pulled out of that. So the point being is like, we were talking about it and we were like, man, we got to like really figure out how to maybe shorten some of these recovery weeks and double up on the bike and just kind of get at least the first two parts of the race kind of under control as much as we can. And then, keep the running going and just, I think if you have that confidence we talk about all the time is like, you have to look for wins. You have to be like, all right, I've got control of this mentally. I've got, I understand what I need to do, and I know I can do it. I mean, like over the next 5 weeks, I'm sure you're going to get off the bike some days and go, wow, I feel pretty damn good. So it's like, you look at a race and it's like one day. We always talk about it. It's one day. What's it going to take? You got 5 weeks to build for one day. As much as you may be behind the 8 ball, I think that isn't, that's some time. You got, if you massage that the right way, you can go into it. And if you feel good that day, you might be able to pull off something you might not think you can right now. But I think that's what it's all about, is just sort of taking it day by day and focusing, like you said, on things that you need to be able to master for that day. And then, you can't perfect everything. And I think that's the thing about, man, I think we all feel that we didn't nail training no matter what. Even if I've got 30 weeks to Chattanooga or whatever full. I in some ways I feel behind the 8 ball already, but I know that there's plenty of time, but I just think that we're never going to really feel like we really nailed training other than, you did before the last 70.3 Texas.
Well, I think the only reason I feel like I nailed it because it was for such a short period of time. like,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Which is,
that's a really good thing.
Which isn't hugely important, I think, if you really, because the longer you do anything, the harder it's going to become, right? And the more opportunities for injury or setback or even just, vacations or loss in motivation. Like, that's why I think it's so critical for these long races, especially at the end of the year. Like you mentioned, Ironman Chattanooga is like, stop, like, please take it off your watch. Like, if it's your countdown calculator for 250 days out, like, relax for a minute, right? Like, or 210, whatever it can be away. Like, that's just having that hanging over your head can be exhausting. And that takes out of your ability to swim, bike, and run the way you need to be. So, like, if I look at it and I think, all right, I'm going to build out my schedule for the next 35 days. My number one concern is, what can I do to set myself up so that I can train every day for those next 35 days, right? A lot of people are going to think, I need to go chase miles. I need to go chase some like really hard threshold sessions. So like, you can only do so many hard sessions a week. That leaves you 5. Okay, right? Like, if you're looking at it that way, looking at, okay, I've got 5 quality sessions, that's really not going to do that much for me, right? If think about it, don't think about it in weeks, think about it in like things you can accumulate over time, right? Which is, if I do the bike, it's 5, and even if I want to run a lot, it's going to take too much out of me to get to the bike to where I need it to be. And I also have to make time to swim, so my energy level is going to be down a little bit more than it would be if I'm just doing a single sport. So eliminate the focus on just nailing like 5 quality workouts and think, can I get in like 30 to 35 days of just really good, workouts of consistent work that builds me up from like, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3 hour bikes that are, easy, but I feel like I'm becoming efficient and I'm really creating a better engine that I can wake up tomorrow and do it again the next day. Yes. Because if you don't, then those quality workouts everyone's obsessed with that are important, but mean nothing, right? If you don't, like me getting on the bike and tomorrow going for intervals only is doing nothing but trying to put icing on a cake full of crumbs. Like, I don't have a cake on the bike right now. Okay. I've got a little bit of icing that I showed that I still had on my ride last Saturday, but I got no cake, baby. And if you want to race, you got to have a cake. And so what I need to do right now is just kind of understand and realize there's really no way I'm going to be able to get that much more powerful between now and it's just not possible between 5 weeks. And I think that's a hard thing people understand. It's just not. But I think the biggest thing that I think we can all kind of start with is acceptance. I am where I am for a reason. And that's okay. And it's not wrong. It doesn't make me lazy. It doesn't make me undertrained. It just kind of, that's how it goes, right? And I think that the biggest thing is to not chase the person you wanted to be this time last year, or where you expected this version of yourself to be 6 months ago or 3 months ago, or even 2 months ago when you had 1 bad week, right? Or 2 bad weeks. Like, if you're really consistent, and this is like a thing that I talk with athletes all the time about, if you're really, really consistent for such a long period of time, a lot of times a bad week is a good week because you probably needed it. Even if you didn't know it, taking that time to let your body recover and adapt. And the other thing is if it's not something that came, if you didn't just decide, I'm taking a week off. Life is groovy. I'm going to go to the beach. I got nothing but, sunshine and pina coladas and no responsibilities for the next week. Then, yeah, I mean, you probably missed out on a little bit of fitness, but you probably get to recharge. However, most triathletes, most type A, most people that are gearing up for a race, if you have a forced week off, it ain't your choice. It's life, it's work, it's, winter storms in Texas. It's, it's pool availability. It's your kids being pulled out of school. So that equals stress, right? And that is your ability, your body and your mind. And it's something I cannot reiterate enough with athletes that beat themselves up for like, I'm just not motivated. I don't know what's wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you if you're not motivated. Nothing is wrong with you if you can't find the commitment level that you thought you would have. Nothing is wrong with you if you miss a session. What your body is telling you is, Mike, I don't have the energy today to be focused on this session, okay? Because I'm so freaking stressed out about whatever it is. I'm exhausted, right? And we went into this in our pain podcast about how like you can be so, you can go out and do like a 2-hour really hard ride and come back and you're like, I'm going to carry on with my day. I'm going to go do some yard work. I'm going to walk the dog, you know, like I'm going to play with my kids. I'm going to do whatever. Do a couple baseball games. Going to go out tonight, wake up and do it all over again. Right? Feeling pretty saucy. I'm feeling good. You can have like a 2-hour long, like exhausting emotional discussion with a significant other or a stressful meeting at work, and you are shelled, right? You are not going back to home to get on the bike, and like you are just, it's exhausting, and life chips away at you like it has for most of us for the last year. And that's why I think being okay, like I don't understand like the obsession with people shoving it down your throat that you have to be perfect all the time. You have to have perfect weeks. You have to have a perfect life. You have to perfect this and that. Like, that's just not reality. And the people that portray that and encourage that are, bullshit. Like, that's just not possible. Like, it's the truth. Like, there is no perfect. Like, no one's perfect. No one's a perfect life. Life is stressful. Life is hard, you know, and you're taking the triathlon to a sport that's very, very important for a lot of people. And you're a lot of people doing a race they signed up for 18 months ago when their life is totally different, right? And they're still trying to put the pressure on themselves where they signed up for the race. Things have been different. First, just take a breath, relax for a minute, and be like, you know what? It might not be the race I wanted a year ago, but it doesn't mean it can't be the season I wanted, right? Or my best season yet. Because really, that's the way you have to look at it. It's like, look at it as a jumping off point. Is just gaining momentum. And you and I have mentioned this many podcasts, and I think we've even referenced in a couple of some of our better races that I know one or at least one of my best races and best performances overall ever when I went into it when feeling like I was not woefully undertrained, but pretty undertrained, right? In terms of, you know, and I think you would say the same thing for Ironman Chattanooga, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago, and I think it was like your best race to date, maybe even, or, you know, depending on circumstance, your bike was, you know, a lot less than you probably would, but you just felt really, really good. And we say this all the time, going into a race, you know, 100% undertrained is usually better than going into a race when 1% overtrained. Well, and that goes for physically, and also mentally, emotionally, and mentally.
Yeah, like I've talked about that Chattanooga race a lot. It was it's my best time ever in a full, and I only trained on the trainer. It was sort of a last 2-month burst of nothing more than, I think, 3.5 hours of riding. It was easily my best ride in Ironman, and the night or a couple days before it, I started getting sick. So I had like this whole like, well, you know, no pressure on this. I'm just going to kind of go out and do it. And I, you know, was relaxed going into the day. As you're talking, I wanted to like throw out like a mental test right now to everybody listening. Like, what if you're just kind of cruising along the schedule, and I was coaching you, and all of a sudden I put 8 weeks to your main race, and you weren't thinking about it, but what's your first thought, your first reaction to that? Is that like, oh man, I got to really get going now? Or it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. So like, it got me thinking about type A athletes and how that, you know, if you're maybe feeling a little bit behind the 8 ball, either a type A or a type B. So like if you're a type A athlete and you feel a little behind the 8 ball, I think you should probably throw a little bit of type B into your life at that point, because there's like, you can't make up ground, you know, you can only sustain and grow from where you're at. And if you're type B, I think you need to throw a little type A into your world. That's kind of how I am. Like when I see that, it doesn't make me nervous. It's just like, oh, I better get my shit together and kind of just get focused on consistency. And that sort of thing can really make a difference. And that's sort of how I do it. I mean, that's kind of been the way I am. I'm not like stressing about anything until I have to throw in my sort of like.
Have you ever stressed about a race? I mean, let's clarify. Have you ever stressed about a race?
Yeah, I mean, I do. But the way I pour that stress into my training is that I just like, I don't necessarily go out and shoot for big numbers or anything like that. I just go out and try to do the workouts, and I'm like, okay, I've got a 4.5 hour ride today or 5 hour ride. I do that, and I don't need to do it like 8 times. I need to do it once or twice and be like, okay, I've got that baseline in me. So now what I need to do is from this point on, I need to take care of myself. I need to get my head straight. I need to get peripheral kind of thoughts and worries out of my brain. And I need to zone in and focus on this race. I need to sleep better. I need to hydrate and fuel and just be the, like, that's always a tough one for me, consistency wise, is to be sort of that wellness consistent person. And I think that's the best thing you can do for yourself, is get that sleep, kind of reduce stress loads, take all those other energy drains out of your life, and kind of slowly pour them into that race day. Because to me, there's nothing, like I've said it for years, is like, all I care about is feeling as good as I can from this point forward on race day. Like, if I feel good that day, that's what I want. And I trust that that's the best it's going to get. And I trust it and believe in the fact that I'll be able to race. Of course, it helps if you've been through it. Like, if this is your first time and now you're up behind the 8 ball, it's like, I'm sure that adds a lot of anxiety, but there's really nothing you can do. You just have to just try to be your best on one day, and whatever that's going to take. And that doesn't mean like wearing yourself down to the bone. That means like stretching the limit a little bit. I always like to, these zone 2 runs and things like that. I've always loved that, throwing some strides or throwing some pickups and things like that, just to kind of remind yourself and just like be like, oh, okay, that's what that feels like. I feel good doing that, but I don't need to like do it until I crumble. You know what I mean? It's just like, is it there? Do you still have it? Do you think you can ride that day? Do you think you can finish the race? Yeah. All right. So now, how are you going to pull that all together and just do the best you can with it? And that's the only pressure you really need.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that you said there that struck a chord with me in terms of things that you need to focus on. And one is, and I think this is hugely important for athletes who are obsessed with making things up, is totally disregard the training plan or the lead up or the build that you thought you were on, and don't try to make it up. That plan is gone, right? Hopefully it ended yesterday. Now, the only focus you need to have is perfecting and executing the plan that you have left, right? Now, if it needs to be adjusted, fine. If it needs to be, tweaked a little bit here and there, good to go. But stop worrying about what you haven't done. Worry about where you are, what you can do, and what you're going to do for the next 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, whatever it is. Focus on that. Stop living in the past, in the training past that you didn't do, and worry about it, because who the hell knows? We all go through fluctuations in our life with training and motivation. Some of you might be better off having gone through it now versus going through it 3 weeks out, from your race and being totally disengaged. The other thing is, like, and I think this is going to be a topic that I think hopefully we're going to be talking about more in the next weeks and months, as people start to, and I've already seen this with the athletes that we work with, is like, I've already seen stress levels rise with athletes, because for many people, life is getting back to normal, which means athletes who usually travel are back traveling. People are going back into work. I'm getting like emails and training peaks like, kids are going back to school, while everyone is happy, right? And I think that's, again, like we talk about, stress is so different. In the last year, we've had stressors and that have manifested itself in different ways, but also a lot of people have had a lot less stress in certain buckets of their life, transporting kids to school, flying for work, juggling all these things and all these sports. And now it's just been like, we're just kind of hanging out at home. And now it's like, kind of like at a staycation with work. And now it's like, wait, now I got my kids go back to school and I got to worry about this new schedule, and I'm going back to work. It's like, oh shit, like we got to get ready for life to continue.
Right.
And we're happy and we're excited, but oh my God, that's stressful. Right. And so I think that's another part that we have to kind of accept, because change is hard. Like, there is nothing more refreshing and comforting to a triathlete than routine and schedule. And when that is ripped up from you, then you kind of feel like you've lost control. And for athletes going through new change, whether it's, shift changes in their job that are making, it hard to work out, or their kids are going back to school, or now they go back in the office 4 days a week instead of 1 day a week, whatever it is. The biggest thing I can tell you, especially you have a race coming up, that's a big one. I'll use Ironman Texas, for example. If you're going through lots of changes in your life and you're things are different and you have all these things, you've had the winter storms, or you've had upheaval, whatever it is, like Monday through Friday, which is usually, and again, this is for traditional athletes, like when Monday through Friday is the hardest, right? Stressful wise, because you got work, you got take kids here and there. It's like, you know what? do what you can do when you can and be okay with that. Like if you have a ride on your schedule for a Tuesday and all of a sudden you feel like, you know what, I don't really want to ride today, I want to run, then go run, right? The last thing you want to do when you're already stressed about being prepared is stress yourself more out between flip-flopping workouts, right? Or like do Monday through Friday, do what feels good and what you can do, because if you're that, if stress level is that high in your day-to-day life, Monday through Friday, then training should be the opposite. It should be the release. It shouldn't add more pressure. It shouldn't add more stress. So do what feels good that day and go out and do it. Enjoy it. Now, Saturday and Sunday, prioritize your longer ride and your longer run, right? Those are the things that you really, really want to keep, the long ride and the long run, because obviously triathlon, especially at the Ironman distance, is a distance endurance event. You need to keep those. So, but Monday through Friday, kind of give yourself more of a mental and emotional flex schedule. Be like, I'm just going to get in what I can get in and get it done. And it's just really, really important. I think you definitely want to still swim at least once a week, kind of keep a feel for the water. But again, if you're looking at 5 weeks out, you're not going to get that much faster in the pool. You really just want to keep it or lose the least amount of it as possible. If you can't get to the pool, you can't do certain things. But most importantly, just take care of yourself and show yourself some grace and just be kind to yourself. Like it's as we get moving into the season and you know, it's like we're 2 months in the year and things haven't gone perfect for pretty much anybody, you know, because that's life, and we miss workouts and we get injured, we have struggles with motivation or whatever. It's like, okay, then, you know, wash away those last 2 months. Let's try better this month or try this week or this day, like whatever it is. Be kind to yourself and be your biggest supporter, and talk to people who will support you and also think like, you're doing good. Like just hang in there, right? It's not, you don't have to be perfect. You can't also play catch up. Like that's just the biggest thing. You can't play catch up to race day. Acceptance, in my opinion, is so underrated in the sport of where you are in life and what you're dealing with and who you are from a fitness standpoint. Because if you can do that and be okay with that, then you're going to take your current self and you're probably going to get it in the best shape that it can be in. And then on race day, you're going to appreciate the experience so much more, because you're just going to be happy you got there. It's not going to be like, oh, well, I really wish I could have done. Who cares? Like the last thing you need to do is start talking negatively about what you didn't do on race day. Like then that's all you hear at like expos or pasta dinners or whatever. It's like, I really wish, I really miss these kind of last night. All that negative chatter,
Pasta dinner.
all these like those worthless night before pasta dinners. Like
Come on, man.
That's what I'm telling you, man. It's like
a banquet.
The banquet, yeah. It's like, what do you do and like you have 14 people trying to reevaluate their fueling strategy. Next day, well, this guy sitting across from me at the 8 o'clock position at my round table said he only takes 1 almond and 2 Tic Tacs per hour on the bike because he is on the ketogenic Tic Tac.
I think I'm going to try that tomorrow.
I think I'm going to give it a roll. He looks fit.
He
looks like he's in shape. And if most of you who are listening have raced a triathlon, you can know that appearance means nothing. Appearance means absolutely nothing. But just go into these races. And again, like if you have the opportunity, and hopefully we will in the next few months, to race, just like be incredibly grateful for the opportunity that you've made it this far and you're still doing it and you're still racing and you've arrived, and then make your way forward. But just be happy with things and triage as best you can, and don't live in the past and don't train in the past. Take the version of yourself where you are and then move forward, and then try to do the best you can, but don't expect it to go perfect, even for the last, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 months, whatever it is your lead up, or you feel undertrained or behind the 8 ball. It's still not going to go perfectly. Roll with the punches.
I love what you said. You can't play catch up to race day. And whether or not this is true or not, it's my theory. But race day to me is worth a lot of energy. Like it's just an adrenaline, source. So you can, like, I think of that, like, people out on the course and just the vibe of people around and spectators and just the organization of like, hey, we've got aid stations and people are giving us stuff. All that stuff gives me energy. And race day energy can go one of two ways. You can either harness it and use it, or you completely freak out lose your
load
mind
bike.
in the first 200 yards of the swim. And like I always say, you can't win a race in the first couple hundred yards or your first 10 strokes of the swim. So back off it. Think about in terms of like, this is a long day and there's this race energy there. And it's the difference between, people that I think a lot, like you see it in playoff games in Major League Baseball. There's just guys that are just so hyped up that they end up striking out like 20 times in an ALCS. But then there's these other, these role players that just are like, hey, I love being here. This is the greatest thing ever. And they're just like in a zone and they use that energy and they end up getting like 15 hits and, out of nowhere become the MVP. So it's like, I look at race day as that there's definitely energy, there's definitely fuel there. So how do you relax into it and just let it come to you versus like reaching out and grabbing it and then like being over the top from the get-go, and the next thing you know, you're halfway through the bike and you're already like, oh my God, I don't know if I can, whatever. Just let it come, man. Let it slowly seep into you throughout the day. And just use it when you get to the run. Feel good off that bike and like, if we can high five, but like, you see people cheering for you. Like let that fuel you, not in, what would be the opposite of that? Like zap you of your energy or like freak you out or anything like that just because it's race morning. And you see, man, we see it every time we go to a race or we're in a race, that in that swim line, you can look in people's eyes and go, oh my goodness, this person is just freaked out right now. No, that's the time you need to relax the most.
Or they become just so disinterested because they've been staying focused for such a long period of time that they become they're not even excited, right? In terms of like nothing's going to get them excited because they're just kind of, I paid for it. I don't want to do it. I just want to get it over with. Like that, you think that's going to yield best performance, right? And if you had to judge, like, yes, ideally you're motivated and committed for the duration of your training cycle. But if you had to pick, would you rather be gung ho at the beginning or the end? It's like the same way as having the most amount of energy to race. Like, do you want to come out of the water guns blazing and smash it? Like, I'll use this analogy because I remember this like incredibly vividly. When you and I did Louisville the last year, it was the actual Ironman Louisville, which was in August, was 2014 or 13. And it was going to be incredibly hot that day. And all I could think about was nothing you're doing right now matters as long as you can run the most of that marathon possible. You're going to pass so many people.
So hard to get that in your head.
And the first 10 miles, like of the course, so you go through that flat stretch and you start to get on the rolling terrain. You've got a couple pinchers coming, thinking like mile 18 or 20 or the whatever. And there's this guy that came by me, flying. I mean, he was out of his saddle, smashing on his pedals at like mile 14, getting up one of these roads, and I was just kind of spinning my gear. I think I was actually taking a leak at the time, but I was actually I peed 3 times on the bike that day. Yeah, up a hill. Yeah, it takes it takes skill. And I was like, man, I just kind of smiled because I thought to myself, I'll see you later. And it was more of like it was almost like an affirming thought to me. And I was like, I'm going to see it because I was so confident in like, I don't want to be that excited right now. I want to kind of put a lid on my excitement and my focus and what I really, really wanted for the day, because the end was so far away. Like if you thought, I was like, I've just gotten out of the water. I'd swam well. And I was like, not only do I have a 112-mile bike left to go, but I've got what's basically going to turn out to be a marathon in 100-degree heat ahead of me. I am so far away from that right now. Like I couldn't have felt any farther from doing that marathon as I was at that point. But I was like, but I know it's still coming. And I want to be as best prepared for that as I possibly can. So I didn't look at all at speed. I didn't look at all at power. I just went basically by feel the entire time because my only thought was, don't get too hot. Stay as cool as possible and get ready for the marathon. And if you look at it, that's also how you can look at your training cycle, right? In terms of getting prepared for your biggest race of the year, the one that you're the most focused on is, do you want to be, going out gangbusters for the first 8 to 12 weeks? Sure. But if that means you're going to lose and burn all your mental and emotional focus points or whatever, and then by the time you get to your peak block, you're like, I'm done. I have 0 interest. You're skipping your long rides because those take the most out of you, right? In my opinion, the long rides, the long runs, those are what take and chip away at your just kind of your mental confidence and like, I just don't really, because it takes time. You got to prepare, you got to do this, you got to pack your bags, you got to make a schedule. Like it's a lot. And to have that mentality of like, I've got to be perfect from day one is so incredibly hard on yourself. You want to be there at the end because, I mean, there's a reason Ironman can be told you can only have 2,000 athletes at this event and they go out and sell 3,500 entries, right? You can hate on them as much about, but that's smart business because what they know is at least 750, 800 of y'all aren't going to show up. Okay. You're not going to show up because you lost interest, you got hurt, you don't care anymore, or you just can't come, right? You want to arrive. And that's why I think just arriving at the starting line, just being there, just being in the moment and being grateful that you're there, like that is already a gigantic win. Is just making it through the training and through life, right? Life is hard enough. You throw Ironman training, 70.3 training into it, and you're adding a whole nother, obstacle to the wheel of life. That's like, all right, now I got to navigate and juggle this. And it's not just one sport, it's freaking three. Like it's a lot to handle. That's why you see so many people not show up because life becomes too much. Injuries, burnout, whatever it is, it becomes too much. You want to be there when the time is right and when the time arrives to be ready. Don't worry so much about where you thought you would be 8 months before that. Just appreciate where you actually are when the time does arrive, especially if you're, an athlete that's able to show up and be ready to race.
Yeah. As you're thinking about that or saying that, I was thinking, early on in the schedule, like sometimes as I'm coaching and I'm looking at, like a Tuesday or not Tuesday, like a Monday or something, and it's got like a run and a swim and then a strength session. I'm like, and it's, 20 weeks away, whatever, so I feel like, we want to add all these extra strength sessions, for example. And like, you got 8 weeks to your race and you want to keep doing the strength stuff or whatever. But it just like overwhelms me to even think about like, oh man, tomorrow you've got 3 sessions to do and you're still a ways away. But I not that I'm opposed to strength training and core work and flexibility stuff and things like that, but just do them whenever, you know what I mean? Like, I just hate the idea of like, we keep just layering and layering and layering all this stuff on top of each other. And it just feels so overwhelming as the time goes. It's like, if you're doing big gear work, you're working pretty good strength stuff, and, to actually say you got to go to the gym and start doing squats and deadlifts and whatever the case may be, it's like it feels like a little bit much. And I think that that's just an analogy for trying to pour too many things of any type of activity into the days. It's like we have to, as we get closer to races, I think we have to, cull the herd or thin it out a little bit and just really sort of like do things that are important, but you can't, like you said, you can't catch up to the race. So like quit, overloading yourself. And I think that just like, if you want to, like, it's sort of like, it's kind of like focus on the basics. Let's get back to the simple basics, do what we have to do to get to that start line and then feel good. And then we'll take our chances. It's like, the first thought you would have sometimes is like, a panic, like it's, 8 weeks away. Oh man, I got to do everything that I've ever thought.
Put in 25 hours a week to get ready.
I got to read all these self-improvement books. I got to really put them all into play and everything like that. I talk about this all the time. It's like, I've got all these books laying around and all it does is stress me out because I'm like, damn it, I read that book and I never implemented any of that stuff. But now I feel like I need to because I just saw it. Mm-hmm. Get crap out of your life, man. And just focus on,
get a storage unit.
No,
I was just kidding. It's like no, but it's like,
just put it away for later.
Just put it away for later.
Do it, 10 years
at some
from
point.
Now.
It's like, it is. It's crazy, like how like the undulation of training and like being motivated and what we see is and how we measure ourselves as success. And there's just so much to be athletes psychologically, I think, and we all need work psychologically, but so many athletes need work psychologically in terms of just their approach and honestly getting to the root of why they have certain expectations. Because honestly, most of them are completely baseless. they just throw a number out that they believe will make them feel good to race at or to have a power at or to run a 5K. I'm like, where did you even get that number from?
Well, I saw someone else did that.
Show me your work and why that's relevant or why that, and like, there's just so, like the best athletes that I know, like they just love training. And going back to your point about trying to play catch up, is that's probably a great place to end it. Is like, if you couldn't just do 20 hours a week because you didn't have it in you, what makes you think you got it in you this week, right? All you're going to do is set yourself up for failure. It is so much better to put, if I'm looking at myself thinking, all right,
move it all to the weekend.
Move it all to the weekend. Oh my God. Like
triple run. And
coach is like, I get a chuckle. Like, I'm sure you do too as a coach. Like, I get the biggest chuckle when I'm going through the week and I see, I'm like, where did the Tuesday and Wednesday go? Oh, gotcha.
Sunday.
You're going to do one of those weekends where you do your long bike, a swim, and a Wednesday interval run on Saturday, and then Sunday you're going to do a long run, an easy ride, and a swim. Got it. Like, and guess what happens? They never get done, right? If you don't do it, lose it and move it on. Like, listen, if you can do 1 20-hour week, it's meaningless if you can't do another one. Or can't do another one. If you're going to do 0 the next week, like that's always, I get it. So if you're obsessed with doing more, then how about just making 5 perfectly great 12-hour weeks and making them all worth it? Like the people, hey coach, I'm taking a week off from work and load me up, buddy. Load me up. I'm like, load you up? Like, what do you mean load you up? You just did 8 hours last week. I'm not going to load you up because you know what's going to happen? I'm going to load you up for 8. I'm going to load you for 14. And then the next week, you're going to be able to do 3 because you're going to be so tired and back to work. It's going to be meaningless, right? But I'm going to have all this free time. Just load me up like I'm ready. No, you're not ready. Like, I know you want to be ready, but being ready and being able to do ready is totally different than wanting to be ready. And so just relax for a minute and just be gradual with things. Don't load me up, coach. Like, it's the words I want to hear the least from an athlete, because what I really hear when an athlete says, load me up, coach, it's, I feel behind. I feel behind. And I feel guilty for not getting all my training in the last 2 weeks. So load me up because I know. I've only done 7-8 hours last few weeks, but dude, I'm telling you, I've got 18 in me this week. I've got it. And now I might be able to do it, and it might lead me to only doing 4 hours the next 3 weeks, but dude, it'll be worth it.
It
won't
calm.
be worth it. Just stay freaking calm and
we'll
stop
load
freaking
you up
out
on race day. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Right, just
wait
stop
till
freaking
if you want to get
out.
loaded up and you're behind, just like take care of that one time.
Take a breath. Relax. It's okay. February's almost over. It's all right. We'll be laughing back to
hopefully normal. This is motivating.
It was motivating. Like,
I think it is.
It's so that's.
I got some backlash that we were kind of
I was
people out of triathlon.
No, I was gonna mention that because it's so. And we do joke, you and I, frequently about how our podcast is often like kind of like Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing. And also you can kind of take it as like a horoscope, or like you can just kind of get out of it what you want to get out of it. And like, I saw that same comment you did that was like, it was so, discouraging. And I was like, and then I also got an email last night that was like 8 paragraphs long that was like, that was the exact podcast I needed to hear to make me happy with where I am in my life with triathlon. And I had to re-listen to it a few times about your rant at the beginning. And it wasn't a rant to quit. It was a rant to appreciate yourself and realize that triathlon is something that we do. It's not who we are. It's a part of the process of life, and and if you want to grow, that's just part of it. And that's also okay. Like, we live too much in a world already that's filled with fear and shame and guilt and beating ourselves up and trying to keep up with the Joneses. Like, we need to appreciate what we have more and be kinder to one another and especially be kinder to ourselves. Like, people beat themselves up too much and guilt and shame other people like it's freaking their job. Like, be kind, be nice to people, treat yourself with kindness. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. That reminds me, and you probably won't know this, but I had a human resources emphasis in my business major.
I had no idea because we have no HR department.
But there was a thing that we studied back in the day, and I never really used it, but it was called a realistic job preview. And instead of like trying to sell the job on this like flowery level of like, this will be the greatest thing you want, and there's like all these perks and all this stuff, you would put in the bad parts of the job just to make sure that people knew what was coming and they would actually really want to go through it and they understood what they had to deal with. And I think of last podcast as sort of a realistic job preview. It's like, do you really want to be a triathlete?
It is awesome and it's life-changing, but it's just, life's hard. Like, nothing's perfect. Like, we sign up for a race, like, I'm going to crush the next 20 weeks. And then 1 week later, you're like, my kids are sick and I've got a stomach bug and like, my training's shot. Load me up, coach. They'll come around, I'll be back at it. I mean, thankfully, you're probably already at race weight if you had a stomach bug.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up.
I tried to wrap it up 4 times, and you started going into your human resources background, which is 0. I'm glad you're putting that to use like you do the books you read. Like you just like
I used to negotiate for labor unions in class.
Oh, well, maybe you guys can be your own union. We'll reach out to you. Send us your coffee if you want. Always reach out to us. Mike is at crushingiron@gmail.com. I know he's got a couple spots open for coaching. You reach out to him again, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions for me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com. And again, our website, which is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community, along with your coffee, is c26triathlon.com, like I just said. Club membership still rolling on. Click on the coaching tab, pop down 3, click on it, club membership. Mike's heading that up. All the info is there. Races are coming. The sun's going to come out tomorrow, and we'll be racing.
But it's going to rain some days, too.
It's going to rain the next 6 days.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it, man.
See you.
Thanks.